Gladiators, blood, glory, games, and winnings. The Roman Empire was known for the legacy that are the gladiators. Aside the amazing legends they aimed to be, the tragedy that came into the legacy is why we know them so well. After all, where did your body go when you die as a gladiator? Those who were gladiators were taught how to kill and die stoically. Defeated, who failed to obtain the so-called misses or grace, could choose the way of death, as he could kneel on the ground in front of the opponent, lean over, and wrap his left arm around his left knee, thus exposing his neck. One quick cut to the throat severed and the major arteries and ensured a quick but bloody death. If the vanquished was too badly wounded to get onto his knees, he was killed with a single stab from behind, sinking the sword directly into his heart. But where did these bodies of these dead gladiators go? Well, in front of the entrance of the arena of the Roman amphitheaters. There was a special space, the so-called splorarium. In this place, the corpses of fallen gladiators were kept, which were deprived of the armory and armament, as the battle gear and equipment of the fallen were given to the slave owner or the local armory. And most likely, the corpses were also thrown to wild animals or buried en masse outside the city, as more distinguished and more popular warriors could count on the prestigious burial. In the end, the gladiators' fights were officially banned by Constantine the Great in the year of 325 CE. By that time, in 404 CE, that January 1st, Western Roman Emperor Honorius finally ended and abolished the games. What is worse than having to deal with the most painfully obvious is, can you even make friends as a gladiator? Close bonds were often formed between gladiators, despite the fact that they might actually have to be called upon to kill each other. The trained gladiators joined formal associations called collegia, also known as their unions, to ensure that they were provided with proper burials and the compensation that was given to their families, if they weren't slaves. It is a little known fact that some gladiators could actually marry and have children and even leave inheritance to their families. Gladiators could also own their own slaves, which once again, for the free man or unsuccessful men in the life of the gladiator, was not all bad. But what do you guys think though? If you were in the ring with your friend, would you fight them? The life as a gladiator did start as a raw recruit, who were also called novices. When they had completed their initial training and were ready to fight in the arena, they were called Tyrones Gladiatoris, or Tyro. The Tyrones often had tattoos applied as an identifying mark on the face, legs, and hands in order to make it difficult to hide if they tried to escape. The tradition of a gladiator fighting lasted for over 650 years. Present throughout the Roman Empire, it was a fixture in the Roman entertainment calendar from 105 BC to 404 AD, and the games remained largely unaltered, bar a few small rule changes. Early on, most gladiators were condemned prisoners and, of course, slaves who were sacrificed by their emperors. They also did have schools, though. The school enticed free men with the hope of winning a stake of the prized money, if there was a prize, and the ultimately, and more important thing, glory. These new fighters included retired soldiers, warriors, and men desperate to make a living. Some were even knights and nobles who wanted to prove their pedigree and show off their fighting skills. Gladiators were an expensive investment for those who ran the Gladiator Schools, and so it was preferable that the fighters just did not die on the field, meaning they had to be strong enough to last more than one fight. However, it was also commonplace at fights held at the Colosseum for the emperor to even have the final say as to whether or not the combatants lived or died. Often invoking the opinions of the audience helped decide the matter. So whether you fought well or not, your fate could lie ultimately in the hands of your ruler. Later, when the Colosseum opened in 80 AD, being a gladiator proved a lucrative career move thanks to this change, and gladiator schools were now set up to be trained volunteer fighters. Also, when we do think of the ancient Roman gladiators, we tend to stereotype and think of them as just men or warriors or slaves. But interestingly, there was also female slaves and female gladiators that were also forced into the pit along to fight side their male counterparts, or as Emperor Domitian preferred, to pit them against dwarves for his particular entertainment. Women fought in gladiators' fights for over 200 years, until the Emperor Septimus Severus banned their participation from the bloodthirsty games. Women who choose a life in the arena, and it does seem this was a choice, may have been motivated by the desire for independence, a chance at fame, and financial rewards, including remission of debt. Although it seems a woman gave up any claim to respectability as soon as she entered the arena, there is some evidence to suggest that the female gladiators were honored as highly as their male counterparts. The brave, strong Roman gladiators not only had their strength to bring into the pit, but also their swords. The type of armor and weapons they fought was dependent on their social ranking as a gladiator. Of course, these types of armors also depended if they needed to face animals. Animal hunts were typically the opening event at the games, and it wasn't unusual to force a score of unfortunate creatures to be slaughtered in a single exhibition. 9,000 animals were slain during a 100-day ceremony to mark the opening of the Colosseum, and another 11,000 were later killed as a part of a 123-day festival held by the Emperor Trajan. in the 2nd century AD. While most animals were merely slaughtered for sport, others were trained to do tricks or even be pitted once against another in fights. Wild animals were also served as a popular form of execution, as convicted criminals and Christians were often thrown into ravenous dogs, lions, bears as part of the day's entertainment. The matches between the gladiators were often brutal and varied. Matches could involve one-to-one combat, group battles, or even fights against wild animals. But these fights were highly organized and monitored by referees. However, the unpredictability of these contests added the danger. The fate of the defeated gladiator was often decided by the crowd, and spectators would signal whether a fallen gladiator should be spared or killed. The famous thumbs-up gesture, popularized by Hollywood. It is debated among historians, some just suggesting it was probably more complex than a simple thumbs up or down. Which leads to the reality to those who couldn't pull through the fight. If anything, even as part of a form of entertainment, it also involved gambling on which fighter would win. If yours did not dictate the expectations of your bet, they were only left to that one option. Gladiators were sentenced to death, often faced gruesome executions, especially in cases where they had been defeated multiple times. Again, as I said, they have to keep trying to fight. Methods could include being thrown into the pits with wild animals or being executed by specialized executors. But either way, the life of the gladiator held some appeal to the free men. The living conditions of gladiators were pretty good, and the role of a gladiator could be highly lucrative. Gladiators were paid each time they fought, and they were actually allowed to keep any rewards or the purses of money. The most successful gladiators were also treated like modern-day pop idols, or K-pop idols if you know K-pop, with fan worship, fame, and glory. Just not sure if they had any fan edits. It is therefore not surprising that some free men enrolled as gladiators. These free gladiators were ex-soldiers, and some were wealthy Romans who craved to the adulation and the glory given to gladiators. They just wanted the FOMO. Other free men simply needed money to pay off their debts, and their living conditions were much better than the conscripted gladiators, and they were given more freedom and were allowed to lead the gladiator schools or barracks. In addition to this, most gladiators were also expected to fight at least 3 to 5 times a year. So which was better, life as a Roman gladiator or life as a Roman soldier? What do you think? But alas, so the final meal. The life of the gladiator was lived on a knife's edge in that he knew that he would have to face death in the arena. Roman gladiators were even taught how to die. They were expected to die with dignity, honor, and no complaint. They were never allowed to show fear. Free gladiators had to swear an oath and enter the legal agreement, agreeing to submitting to beating, burning, and death by the sword if they did not perform as required. But knowing you could die at any point, what would your last meal be? For the day before the Gladiator Games, a public banquet was held for the gladiators, which was called the Coena Blabira. During this feast, the gladiators were all determined to enjoy themselves, as they were all aware it could be their last meal and their last day in the life as a gladiator. Anyways, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe and answer this. As I mentioned with the last meal, what would your last meal be if you had to fight for glory the next day? I'll see you next time. My name is Jess, and I wish you all the best.